too scared to visit a salon? Many of us didn't get a haircut for months, in fact an entire year during the pandemic. We are so glad to collaborate with Artist Salon and Spa for this episode. A creative hair and spa space dedicated to building relationships with clients, staff, and the community at large. Owned and run by another remarkable woman, Fadwa. You would be amazed to know that during the pandemic, our very own Wayland-based Artist Salon and Spa not only dealt with these difficult circumstances, but also continued to provide services safely to residents in and around Metro West area. Over the years of living in Wayland, if I recommend one salon to anyone in Metro West, it's Arte. Also, since reopening, it has been operating at only 15% capacity. This has given them extra time for sanitation and for air filters to work between appointments. They have installed plexiglass barriers and have temperature checks. Through it all, their client-focused culture and their artistry has remained the same. And as is evident from their collaboration with us, their commitment to the community has endured too. They are accepting new clients and would love to welcome anyone listening into our extended Arte family. So check them out at artesalonandspa.com. Today we have a truly special woman of Wayland with us. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Antonia Hieronymus. Antonia is English and has lived half of her life in Wayland. When I recorded this episode last year, I didn't know that we will not be able to publish it. The story is intricately tied to her remarkable nonprofit Loose Change. Fundraisers for her nonprofit was cancelled twice because of the pandemic. So we begin our season 3 with this story. I know. Let's begin. But outside of her nonprofit work, she has 2 of them. She's a marathon runner and a keen gardener. And inside the house, she loves to cook and bake. Her vivid description of her journey in this episode will take you to Peru, England, and India. Antonia Hieronymus, thank you so much for coming to our show.
My gosh, thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
So, getting into Wayland, how did you settle down here?
Well, we moved to the Back Bay first of all, and then we were looking for somewhere to settle, for the kids to go to school. I had a matrix of commute time to Boston and school district, quality of the school district. And we quickly fixed on Wayland as being a great school and easy for my husband to get to work.
These are the top 2 reasons why people choose Wayland.
Right. And he's from Iowa. So he's from a farm in Iowa. And I'm from a city, so he wanted some land.
Tell us about your childhood.
Sure. Well, as you can probably gather, I'm English, but I've been more than half my life in America. I grew up in suburban London. I'm the youngest of 4. I've got 3 older brothers. I was a massive tomboy. I pretty much just wanted to follow my brothers around, but they weren't having any of it. I was heavily into sports and yeah.
And then, so you grew up in England and then you moved to America when you were...
When I got married. Well, when I met my husband, yes. He dragged me over here, kicking and screaming, just after our first daughter was born.
So, Antonia, I wanted to know more about you living here as an English, someone who just arrived, after spending all her life in England. And what were the things that you thought was different? And did you feel at peace?
That's an excellent question. I was mostly at peace. My mum was German, and so, I'd always grown up with somebody who was from another country. Mm-hmm. We had 2 cultures in the household all the time. So that part didn't feel unfamiliar. Living in a different country didn't feel particularly unfamiliar. England and America mostly have the same language, so there wasn't that barrier, which was great. People were a lot friendlier than they are in London. Yeah. What was interesting, I think, is that moving from London to the Back Bay of Boston is 3,000 miles, but not really that big a move. It's a similar lifestyle. But moving from the Back Bay of Boston to Wayland was a huge move, and it was only 15 miles. But, people came round with a casserole when we moved in. It was like,
wow.
I don't think I could have named all my neighbours previously.
So nice.
So it was it was nice. It was startling as well.
Now tell us about Loose Change. Tell us how the story started and how you began with that.
How far back do you want to go? Do you want to go to my sort of when I was 16? I think I pretty much decided I had to save the world.
I mean, yeah, we can go from there. Yes.
I think that I decided that I needed to save the world when I was a very idealistic teenager. And also, I also made a decision that I wanted my life to be extreme. So I ended up, when I was 20, going to work for Mother Teresa for a year in Calcutta.
Oh, my God.
I mean, obviously, lots of people asked me the question, why couldn't you just sort of, try and stay in England? And, of course, I was just... I don't know. You always hear of the dark hole of Calcutta at that time.
Years.
Yes. It was just. It had to be the ultimate experience. So I went there for a year and pretty much felt that after a year I'd failed because I didn't really save anyone. It was a drop in the ocean, but I'd sort of saved myself. But I felt very guilty about all of that.
Traveling to India?
That the whole year had been a failure, that, the world was a lot more difficult to save than I'd anticipated at age 20.
But oh my God, you took the step at that early age. I mean, I think...
Well, I think it was naivete more than sort of courage. I really did not know what I was letting myself in for. Right. I thought I'd arrive, sort of 20-year-old, and they'd welcome me with open arms and say, "You're here, thank heaven. Now we're all going to be fine." Obviously, it was a lot more difficult than that, very, very different.
Mm-hmm. And so, you were all alone when you came to India?
I was. Yeah, I didn't know anybody at all.
Oh my God, hats off to you.
That was a culture shock, to put it mildly.
I'm sure.
But also extraordinary, really extraordinary. Mm-hmm. I mean, talk about a fish out of water, I didn't know a thing. But I was very fortunate, people were very friendly and helpful. They were, yes. Mm-hmm. There's a sort of continuing sort of clique of people who are working for Mother Teresa at all times.
Right. People
stay for a year or just a couple of weeks. But I got quickly into a community of them, which was great. But it was, every day was a huge challenge and something that I just didn't think about. Mm-hmm. Previously I didn't think about, really where food came from. The fact that lots of people made their homes literally on the pavements, and
they still do.
Yes, but I was from a nice home in Surrey. It was very, very disturbing. Every day you saw something that was so different and new and challenging.
Have you been to India recently?
No, in fact, that was an interesting time to be. The mid-'80s was an interesting time to be in India because now it's changed so much. At that time, we didn't have outsourcing,
right, which
has created this whole, middle class in India. Well, not that I've been, but so I hear. That wasn't there when I was there.
Yes.
So it was, I think also, one of the things about it, I think there was less opportunity really we didn't mingle as much as I would like to have done. Looking back on it now, I mean, I think I have two friends who are from India from that time.
Wow.
Which is not, but I have 3 or 4 that are, from America and England and the Netherlands. So it was different.
I see.
But maybe that was just me.
Antonia, this whole experience of going to India at such an early age.
No, I mean, I wouldn't do it now on that budget.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to ask you, how did you just manage all that? Did you pay it out of your pocket?
Yes, I did. The reason I wanted to work for Mother Teresa is that I could have done voluntary services overseas, which is the same as the Peace Corps sort of thing, the same idea. But that was 2 years, and I wanted to do only 1 year. I'd set up a job for me to come back to. So I wanted to do 1 year, and Mother Teresa sort of had no organisation, no administrative backup. There was no sort of home office there. So it felt like it was more an act of generosity, and it was totally self-directed. Because I didn't go to an office somewhere. It was just totally by myself.
Oh,
that seemed sort of, I don't know, perhaps more noble in my young 20-year-old naive eyes.
I know. I'm sure audience might just want to know about how she was when you met her. And I know that your experience has been a little different, but we want to know about it.
Well, she was probably the most annoying person I've ever met. But because she came from a single-minded conviction. But if you didn't share her conviction, it was impossible. But you could only have achieved what she achieved through being single-minded and not brooking any opposition.
Right.
What's interesting, I think, is that it wasn't a spiritual pilgrimage for me, but whenever questioned about anything, Mother Teresa would say, you need to have faith. And for me, that wasn't an answer. It wasn't a quest that I was on. But what's interesting is that after her death, her confessor published her, some of her letters. And it revealed that for many years she questioned her own faith, including the time that I was there. So I think now I was so frustrated with her at the time because, it was there was no answer other than have faith. And yet now, looking back on it sort of 20, 30 years later, she was struggling with her own faith. So that's interesting now.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And did you have one-on-one with her?
Yes. I mean, she wasn't there much. She traveled a lot, around the world giving speeches and things. But then she left the various homes that she ran, that the Missionaries of Charity ran with nuns.
I see.
And they were mainly staffed by sort of novice nuns for the Missionaries of Charity, which would be they were Indian girls who would come in from the provinces.
So coming back to the story, so that happened, and then?
Yes, so then I think I really felt like I'd failed in India to save the world, and so I gave up world saving for a while, and went off to be an investment banker, which is about as diametrically opposed from world saving as you can get. But I think that's why I did it, because I really wanted to get as far away from that as possible. But when I moved to America and had my children, and then I wasn't working, I just sort of felt I needed to do something, felt I needed to make a difference. And I didn't really know what. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew that there was something brewing. And when you have two little children, you sort of don't have that much time to think about it. By the time they go to school, then that's time you can sort of get stuck into something again.
True that, yeah. Either yourself or a house or something takes over.
Right. I mean, you've got to do something, right?
Yeah,
we can't just go to the gym and have lunch all the time, right? Oh. So, but really it started because we have in Wayland a 7th grade social studies teacher who's a Peruvian archaeologist. His name is Daniel Fernandez de Vila. He's an inspirational teacher. Wow. And he organized at that time trips for 4 boys to go to Peru with him and take some books for schools with them. But you go to a very, very remote area in the northeast of the country. It's high altitude. Many of the villages have no electricity, no running water, no school, no healthcare. They're subsistence farmers. And there are no other NGOs there at all. And also they don't get any government help.
They don't at all?
No, none.
And there are no NGOs?
There are no NGOs there. I mean, occasionally there's been one, but they've just been there for a very short time and then gone. So these people are really, really high up in the wilderness in the Andes.
And you met Daniel in Wayland?
Yes. So my son Theo had him as a teacher.
Oh. And
Theo absolutely adored him. I mean, he really is an amazing teacher. Inspired Theo for a lifelong love of history. And fortunately, Theo was invited to go with Daniel. So Daniel has kids when they're in 7th grade, and he gets to know them. And then when they're in 8th grade, the fall of 8th grade, he would invite 4 kids to go with him to Peru. And I was so grateful that I really wanted Theo to get invited. And he was invited, which was just thrilling. Wow. And I said to Daniel, well, how can I support you? What can I do? I'm so pleased my son is going. And Daniel said, well, I'm going to take more children this year. And do you know of anybody who may want to chaperone? Of course, my immediate answer was, yes, me. And fortunately, my son was fine with that. He didn't mind my going. Sometimes I think a 13-year-old kid does not want his mother around, but I was fortunate that Theo was happy for me to go. So that's how I found myself involved.
So you go to Peru?
So I went to Peru,
with the whole batch of students and Daniel? Yes,
so there were seven boys, I think 3 adults and Daniel.
But up until then, the concept of loose change or the idea did not...
Nothing happened, no. I just thought I was going on a trip as a chaperone. Sorry. We arrived in this village. Again, as I said, no running water, no electricity, no healthcare. This is really tough conditions these people are living in. And yet, when we arrived, we're coming on an expedition with, you can't imagine the amount of gear we have, tents, sleeping bags. We all have, like North Face jackets and things to keep us warm. We have, all the sort of camping and high-tech gear that you can imagine. And these people literally have nothing. And yet they're the ones who are taking the shirts off their backs, offering them to you. Sort of literally. I mean, it's an extraordinary environment because these people are so remote and they're so dependent on each other. And therefore, their sense of community is vastly more than ours. We can drive around in our cars. We don't really need to talk to anyone. Whereas they, even if you have an argument with your neighbor and you never want to speak to him again, the plain fact is that if he's then riding to the town the next day, which is 3 days walk away, you need to communicate with him to get a message to your mother-in-law or buy supplies or whatever it is. I mean, You have to get along. You don't have to get along, but you have to communicate and depend on each other.
To survive.
Absolutely,
the conditions are already so.
It's really startling to be there. I mean, that's one of the biggest difference, I think. Despite, you could say the biggest difference with these villages is the number of material possessions. I really don't think it's that. For me, it's the lifestyle.
Oh.
And at the end of the trip, after having had this extraordinary experience for a week with these people, I just thought, I just have to give back. I just have to do something for these people.
Right.
And I said, it makes me emotional even now. I said to them, what do you need? What do you really need? And I fully expected the answer, solar panels. But the answer I got was, we need a school. Then we can help ourselves.
Oh, my goodness.
That's how Loose Change started. And I thought initially as well, some kind of infrastructure project is what they would want. But no, it came down to
schools,
education.
Wow.
And I think I pledged right then and there, okay, right, we'll build you a school. And then obviously I had no idea how to do that. I didn't really think about it much. I mean, I knew it was a promise. I knew I was good for the promise. But I think I really started to think, well, how are we going to do this now when I got back to Wayland? And it was actually my son. So if you think of the normal fundraiser in a school, parents get out their checkbooks and write a check.
They do. Yeah.
And what we really wanted was for kids to be able to get involved, that it would be a different type of fundraiser.
That's a great idea. So they understand.
Yes. And Theo, my son, just came up with the idea of Loose Change.
How old was he?
13.
Yes, you said 13. Oh, my goodness. And he had this idea?
He had this, and it was a great idea because, it's perfect because, it is astonishing how much money you have, right at this second lying about your home that you're not using, that you've sort of forgotten about. They might be small amounts, but there are coins that are behind the, dryer under your car seat.
So the leftovers became the life-changing gifts.
Yes. And if you think about it, that's actually a recycling effort.
It is.
It's not, you're not having to buy something new or get out a checkbook or make a donation. Really, you're just collecting stuff you're not using. And what was remarkable about it was just how enthusiastic the kids were about it. Particularly the middle school and the elementary schools in Wayland loved the idea. It's difficult to go to Wayland public schools and say, I've got this great non-profit idea. They're busy and they've got... but we were very fortunate that all of the schools embraced the idea of Loose Change. And I think it was because the kids were involved.
So
it wasn't the regular fundraiser.
Literally means loose change.
It literally means loose change.
And so you have to collect it from wherever you
yes.
can and just... Okay.
So the first year, what we do is we give every student a little baggie with a logo on it. And we ask them to see if they can scour their homes and their cars and, wherever they are and find coins that are forgotten. Of course, we do accept notes as well. Sometimes that message doesn't get across as quite as much as I would like, But yes, so kids bring it in. And the first year, there was $15,000 worth of coins that were brought in, yeah.
That is amazing.
I know. And you cannot believe how heavy that is.
I'm sure.
My car would not drive when I tried to drive it to the bank.
Did you take a picture, Antonia?
Yes, I do.
What
have
did you
pictures
put that in?
Buckets. Hundreds of buckets.
Yeah, I was thinking the trash bags won't work.
No, because that's too heavy.
It's too heavy, yeah.
So that first year I kept it all at my house and then tried to take it to the bank in one go. The car wouldn't move because it was too heavy. So then I now have learned that I take it to the bank, throughout the week. But yeah, people responded to it.
How incredible.
It was great. It was really great. It was such a fun experience.
And the banks were easy going on though.
Well, I have to give a shout out here to Middlesex Bank because they nobody else had a counting machine and they count it for us for free. If they didn't count it, I'd still be counting it,
Yeah,
but
that would be it's such a big thing too.
It's huge. But their staff, they pour it into their machine bucket by bucket, and I think actually their faces fall every time they see me because they think, oh my God. But they say, I mean, they're very, I just have to thank them, you know, in any way publicly I can.
Absolutely.
They're really supportive. And in fact, in the Middlesex Bank in Cochituate here, there's a banner that was handmade by women in Peru thanking Middlesex Bank for their participation. But yes, so they count it for us.
They did.
Which is great.
Which year are we talking about when this was collected?
So it started in 2010.
Okay.
And it's been going every year since, I think there was a gap of 2 years in 2015. So this is the 10th year.
Wow. And why were those 2 years not...
My husband died.
I see. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you. So I took a break from everything.
Okay. So, and tell us about Daniel. So now is he involved? He's still here?
Yes, very much
as a
so.
Teacher? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. A big shout out to this wonderful social studies teacher.
He's an inspiration. He really is. We're fortunate to have him in our town. All I can tell you is that going to Peru with Daniel is like going on vacation with Indiana Jones. I mean, he's very charismatic. He knows about archaeology. I mean, just picture, if you will, walking around a sort of hilltop town, similar to Machu Picchu in concept, a hilltop fortress called Quelap, and you're walking along and he's giving you an architectural tour, and he reaches his hand into a hole in the wall and pulls out a human pelvis that's like 1,000 years old. Wow. That kind of thing. I mean, it's quite a party trick.
But it's amazing.
Yeah, he's great. We're fortunate to have him. And
I'm sure he would have so many stories about how he found things. And
yes. And he now we have lots of teachers in the middle school who've been to Peru on the trip as well. So in each grade level, we have many supporters who've been. We're expanding our reach, even and now in new towns. We're now in Concord. Last year, 2 teachers from Concord came on the trip.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Now they're organising Loose Change in Concord. So one of the things is that in 2010, most people in Wayland had a jar full of change. Okay. Now they don't, because they've given it all to us. So, and also, I don't know about you, but I don't use cash anymore.
So having cash, not using cash and using the digital currency is a huge challenge for Loose Change.
It's a huge challenge. I mean, our income has gone down by half. So that's a big challenge. I mean, it means we spend what we raise. We spend 100% of what people give us on education in Peru.
So who sponsors the tickets and everything?
Each person pays their own way.
Their own
yes.
tickets.
The fundraiser is just about getting educational equipment for schools in Peru.
And everything goes to them?
Everything, yes.
Antonia, describe me how it looks like when these people started getting these, resources from Wayland, and what were their, expectations, reactions to when you started doing this?
I'll tell you how it works. So the first year...
Yeah, I should be asking how it works.
So how it works is, so we raise the money, then we send it to Daniel's mother in Peru, because she's a retired librarian. And we give her a list of the schools we're supporting that year. How many kids? I mean, a lot of these places are one-room schoolhouses.
Okay.
Therefore, we'll say this one has 30 students, ages 5 to 10. They don't have anything. And then she knows what to buy, what kind of books, what kind of materials, pencils, paper, games, puzzles, all the things that they might need. Or we'll say this is a high school, they need science equipment. So it can be that different where we go. Most of them are the smaller one-room schoolhouses. Then she employs people from shantytowns there to come and help her codify everything for which town it's going to.
Okay.
It's a massive undertaking.
It is.
If you think of...
And kudos to the people there who are doing all this sorting.
Yes. Then she ships it to a town called Lemabamba, which is sort of the end of the line. The road sort of runs out in this town, and this is the town where we base our operations.
Okay.
And there, the villagers have to organise coming to collect the supplies themselves. So they either have horses, they organise horses to come and collect and take it to their town.
Wow.
And then it doesn't get opened until we arrive.
Oh, and which month of the year?
So we go in the summer, which is the dry season. Peru's sort of on the equator, so the seasons aren't that different, but this is the dry-ish season. And the books are shipped just before we arrive. then they have to pick them up because, as you know, if you give people things, it doesn't make a difference in their lives. But if you partner with them to build something together, then that's what can make a difference. I mean, it's the old adage, if you give someone a fish, he'll eat for a day. If you teach them to fish,
I know.
You teach them for a lifetime. So I think it definitely is the model that we're not just going to give people things.
Who designed it, Antonia? When you were doing this, who was the person who actually, I know it must be a team effort or, you must have sat down. But I really want to know the design because it's one thing to have an idea and collect all this money. But then the other thing is to actually connect with these schools. And I'm sure the connectivity is not that great there.
It's not. I mean, it's getting better, as you can imagine. I think Lema Bamba had only got electricity 4 years before I first arrived. So it's changing very, very rapidly. They now have an internet cafe. So it's all very rapid change. Basically, Daniel has been doing archaeology and also philanthropy in this area for 20 years. And when people hear that he's coming or that our trip is coming, they will walk from many surrounding villages for several days in order to try and get an opportunity to talk to him, talk to us. And for example, the first year they'll meet us. They'll say, we have this number of children. This is the equipment that we have, which often can be nothing. We've seen people learning to write with sticks in the dirt and learning to count with, just pebbles that they find. And then the next year, we'll bring them a donation. We'll say, well, we need you to build shelves. Or, for example, if their building is dilapidated, we've supplied material, and then they build it. So, it's there's an investment from the town and us. So it's a collaboration. That's the sort of one of the most important parts.
Do you get support from the government when they got to know about this whole thing?
No.
Did you try?
No. So this is we just do this. I mean, it's a registered non-profit in America. And so the first year we'll give them some books and sort of see how it all works and make sure that the community's united around the idea of education. And I think one of the things you wouldn't want to give a town a donation of books and then find that those books were in the market for sale the following week.
Oh, yes.
You'd want to know they were actually being used. One year, we gave a town a donation of books, and the next year they hadn't been touched because they were too valuable on the shelves. So it's a collaboration. So the first year we give them a small donation. The next year we'll give them the big donation. And then the third year we'd sort of patch up any holes.
So they're also accountable and they're held accountable.
Yes.
And, right,
yes.
Right.
I think that's really, really important.
Very important.
It's a collaboration rather than a donation.
Right. True. And there are so many causes in the world right now where people raise funds for, but they just don't know how it's going into things, into the system, and how is it working? Is it efficient enough, or is just being given to people, or people are just keeping it in the middlemen?
Exactly.
It's very important to oversee this process.
In fact, can I just say something about your last comment?
Yeah, sure.
Which was about, I think you said about, donations being left and not being used for the right things.
Yeah.
I think that is something that does happen. But one of the things about Loose Change, again, because it's kid-led, kids are going around picking up change and putting them in bags and bringing them in. I've said, as I said earlier, it's kind of a recycling effort. Then I come back every year and show a video in the schools to elementary schools and say, look, this is what you did. And it's very visual. It's as you say, if you give money to save the children, a massive organization.
Every kid understands their contribution.
Yeah. This is what we did with your money. We'll show either a building that we built, or we'll show the kids opening the boxes of books and crayons and supplies and the delight on their faces.
Oh my God.
So it's very immediate. They can actually say, you did this. Which is one of the things, another of the things I love about this whole enterprise. And there's a reason, I think, to keep it small scale. I don't think we want to now go internationally or anything because,
But do you want to go to different towns? Because
different towns here, yes. But I think we want to stay in the area where we are in Peru. Firstly, because, the need is unlimited. But also, if we keep it small and personal so that we know the people in these villages, I think we can make sure that it's always going to be, what they actually need.
Right.
It's very direct.
No,
I think
but my point is, this operation was being done in Wayland first.
Yes.
Do you intend to go into different towns?
Yes. I think that's our way forward. I think we have two ways forward. Given the decrease in amount of cash that people carry around, and the fact that I think we've emptied people's change jars now. I think the two
I
ways.
don't think so, Antonia. I think there are new people like me.
Yes,
who are in
yes,
the
I hope
town.
so. I hope so.
And Wayland is full of starting families, like
Yes.
the
And people
early
come in and go,
nesters.
yes. I think the two ways forward are to go to other towns and also to maybe change the name to Loose Venmo or, something like that. Just be able to take an electronic.
Yes.
At the moment we can't, but we hope to bring that in very soon.
And in summer, do you take the kids around to see just the villages or see around areas?
Yeah, so we all fly to Lima.
And the kids are accompanied with the parents, or?
There's a couple of parents. So say, I think this year there are 12 kids going. I think there are 3 adults, Daniel. And we have the most extraordinary support in Peru with our local team on the ground there. We have drivers and guides who are the world's most extraordinary people. They really are.
Yeah.
But so there's a lot. It takes quite an undertaking. All organised by Daniel. He's got it down to a fine art. But we spend a day in Lima because we pick up trucks that are very safe and secure. There's a lot of logistics still to do. But then you drive north. So when you arrive in Lima, at that time of year, it's full of tourists.
Right.
All of whom go south to Cusco and Machu Picchu, and we go north. And after we've been driving for about an hour, we don't really see any other tourists at all. This is a very unvisited part of the country.
Wow.
And we drive through the desert for a day and a half, and then up into the mountains. It takes about 4 days to actually get to this town. Wow. And when
this is exactly why I was asking, because it felt like it was really remote.
It's very remote, yes, it is. And then we spend another day just preparing, because you can imagine there's probably about 30 horses involved in this operation. The team rides horses to get up mountains and things like that, but also then all our gear goes on different horses. So there's a lot of horses to organize, kit to organize, how much water we need to bring. If we're out, imagine being out on the trail for 7 days with 12 people, the amount of water you need to carry. Food, where we're going to get food from, it's a massive undertaking. That all gets organized, again, by Daniel and the local guides. And then we set out, and depending on where we're going, we could be going to several villages, sometimes 4 villages. What mostly happens is that we hike out, then we camp like in the schoolhouse that we are, donating to. So everybody is in one room camping on a concrete floor.
Wow. Okay.
And we'll stay there and make the donation and see whatever things of archaeological interest there are there and hang out with the locals a bit. And then
this must be such an experience for the kids.
It's extraordinary.
It's amazing, yeah.
For
Even
many
for the adults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's life-changing. It's life-changing for anybody. I've never met anybody whose life is on whom it did not make a profound effect.
Right.
But imagine, you've got sort of, say, 10 Wayland teenagers, kids in the high school, basically, many of whom have never been either out of America or certainly to a very poor place before.
Yeah.
It's a massive change for them.
It is, definitely.
And one of the things I love about the trip is talking to them about it, about their impressions. Some will feel guilty about where they're from, some will sort of hold back and be intimidated, and some will just jump right in and play with the kids and
joyous
and just
happy.
Yes, and have, even though some of them don't speak very good Spanish.
I can visualize it.
It's wonderful, and the kids in the villages are just thrilled. It's so exciting for them, for us to be there.
I'm sure that must be.
Yeah, it's a delight, and people are so welcoming. And then we go back to Lema Bamba, and then I was telling you earlier about the guides we have. These guides are superhuman. I mean, I've encountered Sherpas before, and they, our guides in Peru, just leave them in the dust.
Seriously?
But they run up mountains.
You've seen the Sherpas, right?
Yeah, our guides, they run up mountains behind you. It's at high altitude, so we're all puffing, just standing up and walking 10
and
feet.
These guys are running.
These guys are running. One time I felt like I was literally climbing up a mountain, rock climbing. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this. And then a guide came zooming past me carrying about 160 pounds worth of gear. I said, excuse me. Yes. They're amazing. And when we get back, they, as I said earlier, they would give you anything they're so hospitable. They want you to love their country. Their culture is that anyone who's a guest they go out of their way to do things for you. Yeah, they just make it as comfortable. Yeah, and if you drop a lens cap 3 hours up the trail, one of them will run back and find it for you. At the end of the trip, it's incredible. But at the end of the trip, we'll have a sort of, a goodbye dinner, and the guides will say things like, I have nothing to give you. I'm just a poor man, but my child goes to that school, and now, he has books, and he wouldn't have had books without you. So this is what I give you. I give you my time.
Right. It's very heartwarming and heartbreaking.
It's there isn't a dry eye on that. But the guides, again, you would just want your young Wayland teenagers to be around them. As I said, you've got these we're from an affluent community, and we're going to a community that where they really often have nothing.
Yes.
And it's interesting to hear some of our teenagers sort of think, well, if you didn't have anything, you'd be sad. But they're not sad.
No.
It's
they learn to,
it's a real education.
It is.
This is a real education to see that, what possessions mean at the end of the day, and the sense of community. There's always a football match, a soccer match.
Okay.
So soccer is kind of like, I think it's almost a bigger religion than Catholicism in Peru. You get a village.
I think many places it is a religion. Yes.
But if you can imagine these villages, perched on the slopes of the Andes, or literally hanging off the mountains, they'll have a full-size soccer pitch.
What? That must be I would love to see those pictures.
It's astonishing. And then so there's always a soccer game, but the whole community comes out for the soccer game.
Wow.
For us, it's the parents of the kids playing soccer who will come out. But this is a community event. I can't stress enough how these villages are communities that, in ways that we are not.
Yes.
Because we don't have to be.
We have so many distractions. We have so much going on for us.
Yes.
And I feel like we have to bring that community feel back into our society.
Well, for me, it's an inspiration. It's a sort of yearly tune-up for me. Just getting in touch again. Okay, no, this is important.
This is important.
Do I really need a different car? No. That kind of reassessment of what's important.
It's a reality check for you every humbling year. Experience that you get.
It is. It really is.
What are the ideas do you think we can incorporate in other towns or bring in? So, do you give a blueprint to these towns who are now working towards loose change?
Yes, I'm trying to tell them things that we found work, things that don't work. In the digital age, it's going to be Venmo or, the credit card swipe thing that you can put on your phone.
Oh.
Digitization, I think that's how it's going to help in terms of fundraising.
How about rounding up the purchase when you're...
Rounding up could be a thing. We'd really like to get local businesses involved because it's such a local thing.
Right.
I think we have a great presence in the schools. People seem to, the kids all seem to know about us.
Yes,
but I think that a lot of businesses don't.
They don't know. No. Yeah. There has to be a way where we can reach out to the local business. This is how we support each other.
Right.
People who are, of course, we are being listened to in over 23 countries now. So if this is an idea that can be translated into their own communities or places that need such kind of support, it'll be great. What is your expectations from the listeners right now?
So we have at the moment a non-profit called Loose Change, and also in town there's another non-profit called Hatton Runa. So Loose Change does educational work in this area of Peru, and Hatton Runa largely does healthcare. They brought in a health plant and that kind of thing to the area. I think that one of the things for people in Wayland to really know is just how much difference this makes and how easy it is to make such a difference.
Yes.
These are small amounts, and you've heard it before, but it doesn't take most projects in the world, no matter how small or large scale, are done by sort of a few people doing 80% of the work. And this is different. It's truly different. This is everybody coming together and doing a little bit can really make a difference.
Absolutely. And
what I'd really like is for those who don't know about Loose Change to really know about it, because I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful, this idea that children can make a difference for other children in the world. I think it's empowering for them.
It is, absolutely.
And it's a simple idea,
And we would also like to know about the timeline.
Yes.
How, when do you start collecting, going there, all of that? Yes.
Can I tell you one more thing that I wanted to tell you before
please.
I do that? Just because I want to... the reason people often say to us, can we give you books to take to Peru? And the answer is no, because A, they're in English, and B, it's really expensive to ship books to Peru. It makes much more sense for us to buy things in Peru, where, the dollar goes a long way there. For example, you can buy a pencil for a penny in Peru. Now, you may see, you may look down and see 1 cent in a gutter and think, well, can't do anything with 1 cent. I'm not going to bother. But in Peru, you can buy a pencil. And you may not think...
how many of us do that?
Yeah, but the other thing is that if you think about it, 1 pencil for a kid at Wayland Middle School can be easily overlooked. But 1 pencil for a kid in a village who can only have 1 pencil for an entire year makes a difference.
It does.
And those kids, they put their pencils on a lanyard around their neck so they don't lose it. 1 year that we went to Peru, there was a kid... Matt Harima, who was invited, and he decided he would pick up pencils from the floor of the middle school for the year before he went to Peru. He got over 2,000, I think 2,300 pencils.
How amazing.
It's amazing, but if you just think about how much we overlook a pencil.
We do, yes.
So there's another thing I would just like people to know, that tiny amounts can make a difference.
Absolutely.
It really can.
It really can, yes.
You don't need any special skills, just a vision.
Just a vision.
And my experience of organizing this campaign has been that people want to help. People are inspired by everything. And it's been amazing just to see how virtually everybody in the world wants to support other people. And it creates connections between people. And that's what's important in life.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. This has been great to talk about my favorite subject.
Thank you so much for listening. This was the story of Antonia and Loose Change. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to our channels and drop a review and rating on your favorite podcast app. We will be back with another amazing story in 2 weeks. Till then, signing off. This is Yamini, your host, and you were listening to Women of Wayland, the podcast.